Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to go once again into Colossians 3 and hopefully finish out the chapter today. This, as I said before, is one of the most powerful chapters in the whole Bible. And if you were ever inclined to memorize an entire chapter in the Bible, this would be the one, because there's so much material in it. It has the secrets of Christian maturity built into it. In our Christian lives, we go through multiple stages. From like a child, we go from infancy to adulthood. But maturity is optional. It is not compulsory. And as a result, there are things that we need to do. There are sacrifices that we need to make if we want to go into the later stages of maturity. And first of all, we have to decide for ourselves, do I really want to go to the next step? Do I really believe that God is so good that he will bless me for going to that next step? Will I get anything out of this? Is it worth it? Because it does involve some sacrifice. Colossians does a very good job. Colossians chapter 3 does a very good job of pointing out exactly what changes we need to make if we want to go to the next level. All right, Colossians chapter 3. Now, last time we made it all the way up to verse 11. There was so much information there, it takes a while to get through it all. Today we're starting with verse 12, and it starts out by saying, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves. What does the word holy mean?
Set apart.
Set apart, exactly. He set us apart to be special. When we have children, you know, when you're going through a pregnancy, and I think many of us have gone through that, you have a lot of hopes for that child. We imagine ourselves playing with the infant, and then the toddler, and the child, and then as they grow to adulthood, we anticipate that they will share our values and ultimately be our friends. We imagine Thanksgivings and Christmases together and grandchildren, and that is part of the fun of being a parent, is not just the everyday interactions, it's the hope of the future with that child. They are part of our family, and we expect intimate relations with our family and to be a loving, close-knit family with shared values. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Today, much less. We see a huge disconnect between the baby boomer population and their progeny. The generations that came after the baby boomers have the least amount of traditional values that has ever existed, and it's caused a tremendous rift. I know of very few Christians who have children that seem to be following the path. And this is really a difficult time to be raising children. It's very disappointing. A lot of people cry in my office because of their children. And I felt some of those pains myself, okay? It's very difficult. Now, God, like a parent, he expects us to grow up. He wants for us, part of his perfect will, is that we mature. We start out as baby Christians. We go through the milk, the message of salvation, and we get excited about that. But then he wants to take us on a pathway where we become increasingly set apart. Set apart from what? From this world, from the decadence, from our flesh. He wants us to grow to become like him, which is very alien to what is going on in this world. This world now is a very accurate reflection of the opposite of God. It's the opposite of love. It's the opposite of everything he stands for. And he wants us to grow to be like him, which is to become weirder and weirder in the eyes of the Lord. As we mature, we look more like Christ and less like this world. That is his expectation is. But we can't force our children to adopt our values. God is unwilling to force us to conform to his will. He's given us the recipe. He's given us the power to do it. But he is not going to overshadow and take over our wills. I wish he would. It would make the Christian life much easier if there was an autopilot button. We don't have cruise control. And our will is involved, and that really hurts us because our will is involved. And if you can say yes, you can say no to him. And unfortunately, we often do. There are two things, and I've said this repeatedly, and I want you to memorize it because it's so important. I have treated thousands of people. Many of them have been Christians. And from my own experiences and from my Christians as a counselor, let me tell you this, there are two things that hold us back from being the men and women of God God really wants us to be. Number one is ineffective temptation management. Ineffective temptation management. We have a problem. We get our pet sins, we justify them, we rationalize them, we continually fall into them, and as a result, we stay at our current stage of growth and we don't go beyond. Okay? Number 2, unwillingness to engage agape love towards those that offend us. Unforgiveness, bitterness. Okay? Those 2 things keep us baby Christians. Those 2 things freeze us at our level of development. Now, ineffective temptation management. We habitually fall into immediate gratification or immediate release sins. We want to feel good now. We want to get rid of this inner frustration, this inner desire. We want to experience it now. So, that's a problem. Ineffective temptation management. Now, if you imagine this is the city of your spiritual growth, your spiritual life, your spiritual maturity. Every time we give in, we nuke a section of our city. And instead of expanding our spiritual growth, we have to now rebuild what we just destroyed. And every time an ITM blows up, that ineffective temptation management, every time we give in, we damage ourselves, we freeze ourselves. You know, there's kind of a correlation between substance abuse and giving in to temptation. Obviously, they're related, okay? But and I don't know if you have any training in substance abuse counseling, but one of the things, if you study that sort of thing, one of the things that you learn early on is that when you start abusing alcohol or cocaine or whatever substance you're using, you freeze with regard to your social maturity. If you started drinking at 15 and then you stopped at 35 you still have the social maturity of a 15-year-old. Okay, now that's not absolutely true, but relatively it is true. Okay, you basically you've used this substance to solve your problems. That has been your go-to technique for problem solving. As a result, your adult problem solving skills have been retarded as long as you're using. In the same way, every time we go to sin to solve our problems, every time we go to sin to reduce our frustrations, we are not using the problem solving skills that God has given us. We stop maturation, and it kills our spiritual maturity at that stage. So just as substances attenuate our social maturity until we stop, so habitual sin stops our spiritual maturity until we get past it. So do you understand what I'm saying? Is anyone not clear with that? Okay. Now, second one, unwillingness to extend agape love to those that offend us. Why can't we forgive? Why can't we stop hating people who have stabbed us, who have wronged us, who have mistreated us, who have disrespected us? Why can't we love them? Number one, it's important to understand that the Bible is not telling us to feel love towards anybody. Thank God. Okay? We don't have to feel love towards anybody. Love is something that you do. Agape is spelled G-I-V-E. Okay? Agape is about getting. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. This is not about feeling. And he says, look, I have loved you. I have given to you when you didn't deserve it. I have given to you when you deserved my wrath. I have forgiven you when you were still in your sins. Likewise, because I've done this for you, I expect you to do this for others. And you know, there's a cost. There's a cost to you. You have to give up the pleasure of wishing them dead. You have to give up the pleasure of fantasizing about getting even. Sometimes if they ask you for something, you're kind of obligated to give it to them. Now, it doesn't mean you have to trust them again. It doesn't mean you put yourself in a position where they can stab you again. It does mean that you have to pray for them. When the thought comes to your mind to hate them for what they've done, you have to pray for your enemies. You have to pray for good for them. The Bible is very clear about that. If we fail to do that, we are stuck in the mud, and we will spiritually not go on to stage C. We are going to be stuck in stage B.
Doesn't that kind of come to from people not really experiencing or understanding the forgiveness and the sacrifice that they receive.
You are right in that people who don't fully understand the extent of their own sins, they are so busy comparing themselves with other people that they don't feel that God really had to work very hard to forgive their sins. But other people's sins are elevated to such a very high level. And that's where humility comes in. Part of humility is recognizing that you are utterly disgusting to God, that He has forgiven you and you have done nothing to earn it. Okay? And if you really believe that, if you really are aware of our own sin, it takes your attention off the sins of other people. And also, we appreciate God's grace more. And we are more easily able to forgive. It's like that man who owed the king 30 billion talents. And the king forgave him every penny. And he let him go. And he went out and found a guy that owed him $10 and had him thrown in jail. And the king found out about it. And he was like, dude, what is wrong with you? I forgave you all that money. I forgave you an infinite amount. And you're going to grab somebody and hold them accountable for $10? What is wrong with you? See, when Jesus told that story, He is appealing to some common sense in the hearers. He says, duh, you have been forgiven. Your debt was, you had legitimate debt. The man's debt wasn't in question. He really owed that much. You had this much legitimate debt, and I forgave you. You should be so filled with gratitude that you forgive anything that anybody owes you. That's what your response should be. If you really appreciated what I have given you, that tells me that you didn't appreciate what I gave you. You considered it like you earned it? Like I was supposed to give that to you? Is that your attitude towards this gift I've given you? Like, of course, because you're so wonderful? But because you went out and grabbed somebody by the neck and made them pay you, that tells me that you don't give anything. You don't care what I did for you. You think that was because you deserved it, obviously, or you wouldn't have done what you did. So I'm going to make you pay every penny. You know that forgiveness, forget it. It doesn't apply to you anymore. And what's scary is that Jesus told that story. And over he said, the matter in which you forgive, ye shall be forgiven.
You know, it does when you're angry with people.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 years back, there was a person that I trusted implicitly and really betrayed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was extremely angry. And, you know, a Christian friend of mine said, you know, you need to pray for that person. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You want me to pray for that person? Yeah. You know, and I'm like, so I the advice was fake it till you make it. And I have to tell you, I did. Every day I prayed for that person, and at first I was like, God bless so-and-so. You know what I mean? God bless so-and-so. Yeah. And before I knew it, it was like, oh, God bless so-and-so, you know, and my anger had gone, you know, and I realized that it does work.
You know, I like that. Thank you for that. That is an incredibly appropriate illustration. That is exactly how it works. That is precisely how it works. I'm not too crazy about the term fake it till you make it, because it sounds like you're not faking it. You are doing love. You don't have to feel it, and it's not fake. The good that you do, when you choose to pray for somebody, you are doing a good deed. You don't have to feel like doing it. The Bible doesn't tell us. And so it's not ingenuine.
Well, the funny thing is, that was her advice, and that was her.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah, right. It still worked.
But,
Yeah.
But, you know, now I see this person in business quite often, and it's not hard for me. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, how you doing? You know, I don't hold any ill will towards this person at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's actually, it has worked. So, but I went into it thinking, this is not going to work.
I think that anytime we face this hurdle, we all approach it from that perspective. You know, I've had the exact same experience, and I remember saying, Lord, you know that I want this person dead. You know that seriously, I fantasize about, I would like you to rain fire down on their heads, to be honest. I want them, I can think of lots of diseases you could give them. If you want any advice, I can tell you how this can be done even. And I'm serious. I felt every bit of it, you know, but I said, because you command me to love my enemies, I am doing this. And you know how I really feel. I'm not going to lie. You know how I feel. But this is what I'm doing because of you, and only because of you. You know, and God blessed that. I mean, I really believe. And again, the more I did it, the less my hostility became. You know, it took years. It did take years. But every time, even to this day, when I think back about it, I have to remember to bless that person. because of this, you know. So